All right, American democracy, we're going to wrap up the First Amendment. We talked about religion in our first video, speech in our second video, and we're going to wrap that up today with freedom of press, assembly, and petition. And so the press is often called the fourth branch of government, mainly because it keeps the other branches, Congress, President, the courts, kind of in check. It watches over them. Obviously, media has grown tremendously over the last, 30, 40 years. Now with everything online, there's media everywhere. So, we have media who they follow the president around, they follow members of Congress around, they cover the Supreme Court, and they report on what those branches do. Now, that's not always favorable at times. Donald Trump definitely complains that he gets a lot of unfavorable news from the media. A lot of times he's calling it fake news media, especially the mainstream media sources that he feels are treating him unfairly. But that's, the job of the press is to watch over the government. Again, it's very debatable with media. There is bias in the media for sure. We have very liberal news sources, very conservative news sources. There's some that claim to be in the middle, but even them are probably slightly left or slightly right on the political spectrum as well. And just understand that the media, their job is to report on things, but sometimes they might take it too far. In this cartoon here, you have somebody who's accused of doing something wrong. They're an alleged wrongdoer. Maybe it hasn't been proven they've done anything wrong, but the media does maybe jump all over them and report things out without maybe knowing all the details. But without a free press, it would not be possible. The government, the president, and Congress would be able to do things without us really knowing about it. So we definitely want to make sure we have a free media, a media not owned or controlled by the government, to report back on that government. There's countries around the world where that does not happen. Obviously, North Korea, China, you don't necessarily have a free press that reports on what the government does. The government controls those media sources, which is not a good thing. So freedom of the press. Freedom of the press includes a lot of different things. You write a book, you write an article in the newspaper, put something in a magazine, more traditional news sources. And then obviously internet is the newest one. When they wrote the Constitution 230 plus years ago, they were not thinking about the internet. So there's a lot of ways that the internet is kind of way ahead of the curve and way ahead of government regulation and what they can do. There is there are sometimes when the government can limit the freedom of the press and cannot. The main thing they cannot do is called prior restraint. The government cannot restrict something before it's published. This is kind of the foundational idea that the government cannot go to media sources, newspapers, TV shows, news networks, and say, tell us first what you're going to print. That's not all. The government cannot read it first and then censor things they don't like. That's not a free media. Our free media, free press should be able to report on it without worrying about what the government thinks about it. And of course, the government cannot ban things just because they don't like them or they might contain alarming or offensive ideas. So they cannot censor something before it's published. Now, if they publish something and then there may be some chances where the government can get involved, but they can't try to publish it prior for the most part. There is an exception to that, and the main one is if it threatens national security. So if the government finds out that a newspaper is going to publish a story that contains sensitive details and the government thinks it could threaten national security, then they can try to stop it. This is kind of like the one main rule when they might be able to use prior restraint and stop something before it gets published. But of course, the news media is going to try to push back, and the court in the end may have to make that decision. You saw this a lot with Edward Snowden and with WikiLeaks, where people leak government documents to these people and to these websites, and then these websites leak these government documents online. The government definitely tries to get involved when they think that information might harm national security. Now, many times, though, the courts recently have ruled that they can be released because it's not really national security. It might be embarrassing to the government. Some of these documents may have showed that maybe the government was doing some spying on its citizens, which, the government may say is national security issues, but courts have ruled that, the people should probably know some of that stuff. So sometimes the government wins and they can restrict it. Sometimes they lose and it's allowed to be printed. Another example of when press can be restricted is during a court hearing or trial. A judge may issue what's called a gag order, which basically the judge tells the lawyers and the people on trial and the members of the jury not to discuss the case at all with the media. They don't want the information to get out there. They try to have a fair trial. They want the jury to only hear information from inside the courtroom, and so they try to, basically keep that as limited as much as possible. So if it's a gag order, they're not allowed to talk to the reporters about what's happening. Or one thing, once you're 18, you are eligible for jury duty. So you may get a notice in the mail saying you have to serve on jury duty. Probably not going to happen to you, but a jury could be sequestered. This is very, for a lot of the high-profile cases, cases that get a ton of media attention. I'm thinking of the O.J. Simpson murder trial. That happened when I was in high school. He was a former NFL football player who was accused of murdering his wife or ex-wife. And then the Casey Anthony trial in Florida, she was accused of murdering her daughter. Those both got a ton of media attention. And so to protect the jury and to make sure the jury in those cases only got information inside that courtroom, they're sequestered, which basically means they don't get to go home. They are stuck in that trial the entire time. So the OJ, not obviously in the courtroom, but they go to court, then they go back to the hotel, they get a hotel room, but they're monitored by sheriff's deputies, and basically everything they do is monitored, from what they can see on TV, what they can read in the newspapers, what they can see online, phone calls. The idea is you want to keep information from getting to them that might sway their opinion. But this, the downside of this for sure is it could be a long time. In the O.J. Simpson's case, 8 months. So imagine for 8 months you are in that situation where you're in the hotel room, you go to court, you go back and forth. You don't get home to your family, you don't get to go to your job, and so it's definitely not probably an ideal situation for most people. TV is regulated by the Federal Communications Commission on a federal level, so the FCC. Because TV and radio goes across public airwaves, it's regulated. You have to get a license. You can't just start your own TV station. You have to get a license from the federal government. Same thing with like a radio station. You have to get licensed. But typically what happens is the government regulates the free stations the most. So think of the general free networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. Those are the most heavily restricted by the government because they're free. Everybody can watch them. And so like the number of swear words they can say, or the shows with violence and nudity, how much of that they can show, the times of day that can show, those are most heavily regulated by the federal government. Now, the more you pay for channels, the more freedom they have because you are choosing to pay for those. So if you pay for cable, TBS and TNT and FX, they can show a little bit more because you're paying for cable. And then if you pay for HBO or Cinemax, those channels get more freedom because you're paying even more for that. So the more you pay for the channels, the more freedom and less regulated those channels are by the government. When it comes to advertising, we have what's called commercial speech. Typically, commercials are supposed to be free. Commercial speech is when I'm trying to sell you something. I can't just claim a product does all these things unless it really doesn't. Now, obviously, advertisers push the limit. They stretch it as far as they can, and sometimes they get in trouble for that. Kim Kardashian was a spokesperson for Skechers, and they had these shoes here. I think they were called shape-up shoes that basically said, you walk around wearing these shoes, and you don't have to go to the gym. They're going to tone your butt, tone your legs. You don't need to work out. Just wear these shoes, and you'll be in great shape. And Skechers got in trouble for that, and they were fined $40 million by the Federal Trade Commission because they basically argued that Skechers had no scientific data that they actually worked. And so they had to pay a huge fine over that. And you see that from time to time. And now, of course, advertisers push it whenever they can. Obviously, I think about like the commercials for the Big Mac and for McDonald's. That Big Mac looks so good on TV, and then you go buy it and it's all squished together, and it's not really what you expected. So they definitely find ways to push their limits. Obscenity is, think of swear words, vulgar language, and sexual content and nudity. This is a very tough thing to regulate by the federal government. Typically, the federal government has basically said, we're going to, federally, we're going to leave that alone and let local communities decide what they think is okay and not okay. Some communities might allow certain things and other communities may not. The best example I can think of is strip clubs. Strip clubs, some communities allow them, they're okay with it. Other communities say, we don't want them here, and they ban them. So obscenity is a very local decision. Local communities get to typically make the call on that. Freedom of assembly, you're to gather in public and private places in large groups. Typically, you're going to do this to try to influence people or to change people's minds or to influence the government, influence their public policy or law-making decision by marching and protesting and demonstrating. So, there's a lot of different examples. This is a protected right you have, is to gather freedom of assembly in a large group of people. But in the First Amendment, it says to peacefully assemble. So that's the key word to remember. If it's peaceful, it's fine. Once it turns not peaceful, the government has the right to shut it down. So sometimes, you've seen over the last few months, a lot of these protests, some of these protests have turned violent, damage being done to property. And so the government then does have the right to maybe go in and try to stop that, because it's, again, the First Amendment says peacefully protest. And you can protest for any group you want. There's no, it's not illegal to be part of the KKK or neo-Nazi group. Most Americans would say that's not a good thing to be part of those groups, but legally, you have the right to belong to any group you want. And it's not illegal for that group to go out and spread their message, to promote their ideas. Again, that's freedom of speech. A lot of these are intertwined: freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. So you have the right to do that. It's not illegal unless those groups then take illegal steps. Those groups do something illegal, that's the illegal part. But again, being part of that group is not illegal. All right, so under freedom of assembly, again, the key word is it has to be peaceful. They cannot ban them. But again, the city can't regulate them. The city can put rules in place on when and where and the times. Just because your group want to have a big protest down the middle of town at 3 in the morning, the city may say, what, that can't happen. Obviously, most people are sleeping at that time of night. That would be disruptive. Do it at a different time. So they can put restrictions on that. Again, you have the right to freedom of associate. You can join any group that you want to do. It's only illegal when you take illegal steps. Again, some of those restrictions, the government can make you get a permit. If you want to have a parade, like we do a homecoming parade for the high school, we have to get a permit from the city to have that parade, because other people want to use that road. Just because we want to march down the road doesn't mean people don't want to drive down it. So the city has the right to say, all right, you want to do something in the city street, you have to get a permit so we know when and where and how long it's going to take, and they can set things up for that. Public property, typically you can protest on public property, sidewalks. You don't have to get a permit to do it on the sidewalk, but not all public facilities. And a great example is our school. Every once in a while, you may have noticed somebody standing out in front of the high school on the sidewalk, handing something out, protesting something. I remember years ago when at Aldridge, there was a group that protested, an anti-abortion group that protested out on the sidewalk, and they're holding up big signs with pictures of aborted babies. If you're on the sidewalks, that's okay, but you couldn't necessarily go into the school. So even though our school is a public facility, groups just don't have the right to come in here. So they can use most public facilities, but not all public facilities. Now, private property, that's different. If it's your private property, do what you want as far as protesting. If you get permission from somebody, great. But you can't just go onto anybody's private property and protest about anything. Think of like Walmart. If you and your group want to go protest at Walmart, you can't have a big rally inside of Walmart, because Walmart's going to say, get out of here. Yes, Walmart is open to the public, but it's not a public facility. It's a privately owned company. They own the building. They have the right to tell you to leave or if you can stay. And then finally, heckler's veto. This is when it might turn violent. If there's a protest going on and the police think that it could cause violence, they could shut it down. A classic example of this is a suburb of Chicago in a neighborhood that has a high Jewish population, some Holocaust survivors. A neo-Nazi group wanted to protest in that community, have a parade, march, demonstration. Obviously, they were picking that community for a reason, and the police stepped in and said, you know what, that's probably not going to turn out good. It might turn violent, so they shut it down. That's called heckler's veto. Without your freedom of assembly, you couldn't gather in large groups, and it would be harder to express your views to the government. And then finally, freedom of petition. This is your idea to your right to express your ideas to the government. Typically, historically, it's been a more formal document where you basically go around and you ask people to sign it, saying, show that you support this, and then you turn it into the government, and it's got 1,000, 5,000, 100,000 signatures on it, and you're showing the government that a lot of people feel a certain way. Now, so that was more of a formal document. It's changed now more recently. Change.org, you can go on there and try to start a petition, or even at the White House. The White House website has a place where you can go and start a petition, and if that petition gets 100,000 signatures, the White House has to officially respond to it. They don't have to do what you want, but they at least have to respond that you have given it to them in the process. And then just even Twitter. Twitter is a way for you to contact your government officials now. Obviously, people tweet at politicians all the time. And it's one way for you to spread your viewpoints to politicians. Without freedom of petition, you could be penalized for your political beliefs, and it would be harder to communicate with your government officials. And again, just your overall reminder for all your First Amendment rights, you have the freedom to do certain things, but you have to remember that the rights of the community come first, and you have the right to do something until it affects somebody else. So you have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press and assembly. You have those freedoms until it affects somebody else, and then the government can step in and put some restrictions in place. So, all right, that's it for First Amendment. Have a great day.